Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. I'm Boris Tizenhausen. Today is April 29th. The top news at this moment. It's not just two apps on fire, all of Russia is burning. In Orsk, the Orsknefteorg Syntes oil refinery was attacked. Earlier, Mayor Artyom Vorobyov confirmed the attack and urged citizens not to go outside and, by no means, approach windows, so that, God forbid, they wouldn't film Ukrainian drones destroying one of Russia's largest oil refineries. And the plant isn't small, with a capacity of about 6 million tons of oil per year. The Orsk refinery plays a vital role in supplying oil products to the Urals and the Volga region, and some products are exported. Peskov said yesterday that strikes on refineries could affect global oil prices. Well, our drone system forces GUR and SBU hit Russian refineries even harder after that. As I understand it, they don't plan to stop, but only to increase the number and depth of strikes on the territory of the Russian Federation. They've reached a level where they hit several Russian oil and gas facilities and dozens of military targets in Russia and occupied territories in a single day. It's come to the point where Putin crawled out of his hole and commented on the strikes on the Tuapse refinery for the first time. Notably, the Botoxed centipede read from his cue cards that, as it turns out, there's no threat in Tuapse. The governor told him, and he says Ukraine is using such terrible methods. Do you know why? Because it can't stop the rapid advance of the Russians on the front. Watch this video.
Совета Безопасности. Риски террористических угроз растут. Продолжают свою подрывную работу структуры международного терроризма, радикальные и экстремистские группировки. Кроме того, мы знаем, что и киевский режим, и его покровители перешли к открыто террористическим методам. Причины очевидны, они для всех понятны. Противник не способен остановить продвижение наших войск, наших ребят на линии боевого соприкосновения. Все чаще наносятся удары и беспилотниками по гражданской инфраструктуре. Вот последний пример – это удары по энергетическим объектам в Туапсе, которые потенциально могут вызвать и экологические последствия серьезные. Правда, вот губернатор только что докладывал, он на месте находится. Ну, во всяком случае, пару часов назад находился. Вроде серьезных угроз нет, и люди справляются на месте с теми вызовами, с которыми сталкиваются.
He can't even string two words together without cue cards anymore. But it's interesting regarding the claim of no threats in Tuapse. Do the residents of Tuapse agree with Putin, or can he see better from underground? Well, as for the claim that Ukraine can't stop the Russian advance on the front, I'll just remind you that over the past month, the Russians managed to occupy 5.5 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory. At the same time, the Russians lost 35,000 killed and wounded. What kind of advance is Putin talking about? In the Mala-Tokmachka area, perhaps. By the way, Mala-Tokmachka has already become something of an international meme. I'll remind you, this is a village in the Zaporizhzhia region, about which the Russians have been reporting on Russian TV for a year and a half that battles are ongoing for this village. Any moment now, and yet they still can't. They just can't occupy it. I came across a bunch of memes about Mala-Tokmachka. You know, they take footage from the movie Star Wars. There are ships flying around, some Death Star and so on, and they write that it's just a typical day in Mala-Tokmachka. And now, you know, Putin has even started talking about the environment. Why don't you appeal to the UN as well? They always, by the way, the Russians always complain to the UN when they take a beating. That is, the war itself, which Putin unleashed, causes colossal damage to the environment. That's no big deal. Blowing up the Kakhovka reservoir dam, causing an environmental disaster, that's also no big deal. Launching drones at the sarcophagus of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, also no big deal. And here, look, he's suddenly concerned about the environment. You know, I think it's finally starting to sink in for some people in Russia. It's unpleasant when the war hasn't just come home to them, but when this war is visible from the window, when it's burning right outside, black rain, smoke, soot, and so on, and it's going to get even worse. It will get even worse, that's a fact. Dozens, maybe hundreds of such burning Tuapses, black rains, and black beaches await Russia. It's all coming. You'll regret 100 times that you messed with Ukraine. By the way, friends, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. It's important for growth. Together we will fight against Putin's propaganda. So please subscribe. And Orsk, Tuapse, that's not all. In the Perm region, the Perm linear production and dispatch station was attacked. This is a hub station of the Transneft system. It's responsible for pumping, storage, and then the distribution of oil through main pipelines. Local authorities, as always, claim that everything was shot down. Well, let's watch the video. We have it right here. Beautiful. Two apps, 2.0 or 3.0, I don't even know anymore. Flows pass through this facility, through this linear station, towards the massive Perm refinery and other industrial centers, and then the raw material enters the general transportation system and is sent to the ports of Primorsk, Ust-Luga, Novorossiysk, and Tuapse. It's no longer heading to Tuapse. You know what's important? The distance to Orsk, for example, is 1,500 kilometers from the border with Ukraine. The distance to this Perm linear station is even greater. So once again, drones have flown there to the Urals. Drones, let me remind you, were already there recently in Yekaterinburg and Chelyabinsk, and Tyumen is right nearby. There aren't enough air defense systems, they simply don't exist. The Russians didn't think that Ukrainian drones would fly 1,500 to 2,000 kilometers. They didn't think at all that Ukrainian drones would be flying over their territory. But that's how it's turning out. And this is only the beginning. Remember how the Russians said, we haven't even started yet. Well, it's Ukraine that hasn't even started yet. Yes, one more thing. I turned 45 today. As they say, it's time to subscribe to the Pensioners Courier and buy a rolling shopping bag. Just kidding, of course. It's a good age, a very good one. You do many things more consciously. Even if they seem like foolish things, you still do them consciously. But tell me, those of you from the Mesozoic era, from the pre-internet times, from the pre-mobile times, don't you feel that at some point a completely new era just began? I mean, it didn't just smoothly flow from one to another, but a new one just arrived, like in the movie Guest from the Future. You know, Kolya Gerasimov stepped into a booth and came out in a different time. In general, it feels like the era has just split into layers, pre-mobile, pre-COVID, and for Ukrainians, also pre-war. By the way, a question for those who are a bit older. What advice would you give to your 45-year-old self? What needs to be done in the next 10 years, or what should you pay special attention to? I think there will be many good and interesting tips in the comments, so please write them there. Another important question for me, is it better to plant petunias on a waxing or a waning moon? Well, my wish today is very simple. For all our defenders to return to their families, for a just peace to come, and for the monsters to answer for everything they've done. We will definitely rebuild our Ukraine, and the failed empire will vanish, disappearing like dew in the sun. And I'm glad that I have you. Every day here we have a small cozy gathering of 504,000 people. That's how many subscribers we have on the main channel. Thank you so much. And in every episode, we don't forget those thanks to whom Ukraine has stood firm and continues to destroy the occupiers. Today we have an important fundraiser for the Defense Forces of Ukraine. We're starting a fundraiser for electronic warfare equipment for the 42nd Separate Mechanized Brigade, which is defending the Donetsk direction. The soldiers have recorded a video message for you. Please take a look.
Вітаємо, друзі! Ми бійці батальйону безпілотних систем «Перун» 42-ї окремої механізованої бригади. Зараз працюємо на одному із найтяжчих напрямків, а це Покровський. Звертаємось до усіх глядачів каналу Бориса Тізенгаузена за підтримкою нашого збору. А нам потрібен реп. Для чого нам реп? Щоб наші автомобілі не ставали ось такими, і щоб наше життя завжди було під куполом. Разом до перемоги! Слава Україні! Героям слава!
Let's help our defenders out. In this specific case, your donation directly saves someone's life. Electronic warfare equipment is what protects our warriors from Russian drones. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. There's Mono, Private, and PayPal for those who want to help from abroad. If you're watching on another channel, there's always a QR code in the corner. It also leads to the fundraiser. And a huge thank you to you from hundreds of our fighters and from me personally. Meanwhile, Russians are still being told that everywhere abroad is bad and only Russia is good. This is not a joke. Former head of Rospotrebnadzor Onischenko has again urged Russians not to leave the country for vacation. He said there's no stupider decision than leaving Russia to go on vacation somewhere. They have such an odious character over there. Last week, this Onyshchenko compared a vacation abroad to a trip to a combat zone due to the risk of catching dangerous diseases there. I'll quote him, "You should go to places where you don't need to get vaccinated." To our beloved Russia, Onyshchenko urged, "Listen, there are resorts in the Krasnodar region. Seriously. Tuapse Anapa, that's where the real Black Sea is. Why go anywhere else? Russians, let's all say thank you to Putin together. Why are you so quiet?" I agree on one thing. Lovers of Putin and the Russian world should never leave Russia. No Disneylands, just Scissoranland, and those resorts in the Krasnodar region. By the way, this same official recently said that there are no viruses in Russia. Can you imagine? No viruses in Russia. Why, you have that very dangerous virus sitting right there in the Kremlin dungeons. Get rid of that one and everything will be fine. But Tuapse, Orsk, Perm, and that's not all. This morning, units of the Ukrainian Navy using 2 sea drones hit the sanctioned tanker Morkiz under the Cameroon flag, which was drifting about 210 kilometers south of Tuapse. With no signal, transponder off, it was waiting for a transfer at sea. The vessel was being used to bypass sanctions. It turns out there will be no peace for you Russians, neither on land nor at sea. A few more strikes like that, and the tanker owners involved in the shadow fleet and shadow shipping will just scurry away from Russia with their tubs like little cockroaches. And then they released the mustachioed Kraken. Peskov made a statement about the parade in Moscow. They clarified, it turns out, that the Moscow parade on May 9th will definitely be without equipment. Do you know why? Because of Kiev's terrorist activity, and because this year isn't an anniversary, the mustachioed hussy declared. So last year they held it with equipment. The year before with equipment. That wasn't an anniversary year. In 2022 they held a full parade with equipment. And now, in the 5th year, it turns out there'll be no equipment and no cadets. And on the podium, I think some crooked, lopsided Putin will stand, the most unlike replicant of all, the one you don't feel sorry for. Moreover, do you know what else they've come up with for this parade? The Russian Ministry of Defense plans to broadcast the actions of troops involved in the war in Ukraine on TV during the rest of the Moscow parade. I really hope those broadcasts happen, but from the cameras of Ukrainian drones? Why go to all that trouble? Just show the parade from 2005 or 2010. Everyone there will swallow it anyway. Solovyov will clap his hands and jump around saying how beautiful and wonderful it all is. But that's not all. In the Khabarovsk region, a general involved in the crimes in Bucha was blown up. Guards General Azatbek Omurbekov, who commanded the 64th Motorized Rifle Brigade of the Russian Army during the occupation of Bucha, was blown up. Yesterday, a bomb went off at a military garrison in the village of Knyase Volkonskoye 1. The bomb was placed in a mailbox. Well, basically, that's what's known for now. As a result, the commander of the Training Communications Battalion, a lieutenant colonel, was definitely killed. Several others were wounded, but there's no exact info on Omurbekov's condition yet. Well, let's hope the whole team went to a Kobzon concert. This major general became known as the Butcher of Bucha, meaning he was accused with evidence of involvement in the massacre in the Kiev region, the horrific crimes in Bucha. He is under sanctions from Ukraine, the United States, and the European Union. And the military under Omurbekov's command committed atrocities not only in Bucha but also in Avdiivka. So more than one Russian general has already gone to hell. Someone was blown up by a scooter. Someone was liquidated in a car. A systematic and thorough hunt is underway for the executioners of the Ukrainian people. You see, they even got him in the Khabarovsk region, and that, for a second, is on the other end of Russia, where the Sea of Okhotsk is, where Japan is about 7,000 kilometers from the border with Ukraine. If they didn't finish off Omurbekov now, they'll definitely finish him off later. There is no statute of limitations for these crimes. Actually, I looked at the stats. 13 Russian commanders are responsible for the crimes in Bucha. They've all been identified, and like in that famous nursery rhyme, they're starting to drop dead and go to hell, which is exactly where they belong. Omurbekov was blown up. We're waiting for good news. Lieutenant Colonel Medvedev, also one of those commanders, is dead. He was run over by a tank by his own subordinate and died a painful death from his wounds later. Another person involved was detained in Russia for fraud. I think maybe he decided to hide in prison. I think that after news like this, hundreds of Russian commanders involved in crimes in Ukraine are starting to realize what awaits them. And here is another interesting statistic. As they say, food for thought for Russians. The defense forces of Ukraine have increased the range of strikes on the Russian Federation by 2.5 times since the start of the full-scale war. That is, if we look at the numbers. Interesting. If in 2022 it was possible to hit a military target at a distance of 600 kilometers, now our drones fly to a distance of 1,750 to 1,800 kilometers. Well, and now add to this another very important factor, scale. That is, if in 2022 there were isolated cases, drones flying one by one, now Ukraine is launching them by the hundreds. And another interesting piece of news, for some reason in Russia, officials from the financial sector were suddenly allowed to speak some not-so-convenient truth. I have one explanation. The figures they are announcing are also significantly inflated, even though they say that the indicators are falling. Look, Sberbank is lowering its forecast for GDP growth in Russia this year and raising its inflation forecast. The estimate for real GDP growth has been lowered from 1.5% to 0.5%. What happened? A threefold drop. What happened? And keep in mind that this doesn't yet include burning refineries, export losses from port strikes, which will continue to burn, and many other important factors. But Putin, look, took revenge on Armenian Prime Minister Pashinyan for his words about a free internet and democracy. Well, classic revenge in Putin's style. Russia banned mineral water from Armenia after Pashinyan's statements to Putin about democracy and internet blocking. They banned a brand of Armenian water, and the decision was made due to, I quote, the need for urgent measures to prevent possible harm to the life and health of citizens of the Russian Federation. So before that, the water was fine, and suddenly, after Pashinyan's words, Armenian water became simply lethal for Russians. It reminds me very much of Putin's revenge on Erdogan for the downed Russian military plane. Putin then banned the supply of Turkish tomatoes, cucumbers, onions, and cabbage. Later, though, he allowed them again. Such an onion banner, a tomato lord. Look, he took revenge then and now as well. Putin is such a petty, nasty little creep, isn't he? Some time passed, a couple of weeks. Let's ban Armenian mineral water. That'll show him. Just like that, you know? A botoxed nasal centipede striking from around the corner. But it's okay. It's okay. Everything he's done will catch up with him and crush him. Well, you take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. I'm asking you, let's help our fighters with funds for electronic warfare equipment. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. Have a peaceful day, everyone, and glory to Ukraine.